Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission, to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Hey guys, welcome back to Sam's Trek, a series of reviews where I take a look at each of the Star Trek films. Today we take a look at the latest Trek film to be released as of 2013, Star Trek Into Darkness. This is probably one of the harder films to review, seeming as this one is still fairly new, and it's hard to get at the core of how I think this film either succeeds or fails without giving spoilers, and I really feel like the second I say anything even remotely hinting at some things, everyone will work them out. So to solve this issue, I have decided to split this into spoiler-free and spoiler-filled. So for those who have not seen the film yet, Star Trek Into Darkness's first and foremost best aspect is its characters, mainly being James Kirk and Spock, who were written so amazingly in the first one as well, and here we get, in my opinion, great character development and focus. Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto continue to perform excellently, and let me say that they're very much responsible for making these characters work so well. The visuals are once again amazing. I really love the colour palette in this film, despite the fact that it is undoubtedly one of the darkest of the franchise. There are many films based on old franchises that seem to darken everything to make it look more modern or cooler, but I love that the rich, diverse, colourful uniforms and the visually amazing different worlds have stayed in this, despite this being known as a, quote, cooler Star Trek universe. Benedict Cumberbatch kills it as John Harrison. The character himself I had a few problems with, and feel free to find out why in the spoiler-filled section, but I'll give him this, he was really scary at moments in the movie, and like Bane or the Joker, he'll become one of the most quotable villains of all time. I really love how the trailers did a great job at playing with our expectations by implying things that would happen in the film but didn't. There are many twists and turns in this film, and while I think the plot became predictable by a particular point, I was still surprised by a lot. The film runs at a pace where come the middle of the film, there's no time to sit down and take everything in. The movie is so dense that there are so many things happening in a single scene, and that can make it a little jarring for those who are a little slow on following such packed movies. I was wonderfully surprised at how many of the characters got to do in this film. Star Trek's two main characters are of course Kirk and Spock, but I was surprised how it seemed like everyone got their moment. As opposed to what I thought of her in 2009, this annoying fixation on having to make Uhura's character a bigger deal isn't as bad here. She actually does have stuff to do here besides her whole romance with Spock, which I still don't really understand, so I was kinda happy to see that. She gets a great scene where she does what she's supposed to do, speaks in an alien language. I won't give too much information, but where I liked her in that aspect, I didn't like her in others. There was a particular moment when the crew are able to beam down one crew member for a fight scene, and for some weird reason they send down Uhura, which made me laugh. Like the first film, there are a few things done to appeal to a mainstream audience which I didn't care for. One of which was making Uhura's character a bigger deal, simply to imply sexual equality. She was never an essential character in the original series, and I don't think audiences would take issue with her not being as focused on as others. The second was this part. It was done solely for the trailers, and yes, she is an attractive woman, but give us some credit, we don't need to see a half-naked woman in every post-2009 Star Trek film. However, despite those familiar issues in this being in the previous film, I actually think that this film does a good job at establishing that Starfleet are explorers and not a military operation. There are themes of do we kill or take into custody, the prime directive of interfering with a pre-warp establishing race, and actually trying to find a civil solution with those trying to pick a fight instead of going out guns blazing. So I think that this film is a little more aware that while there is a lot of intense action, this is still a Star Trek universe and the characters act a little more mature this time. So all of that was great. My main issues with this film are in the fact that I feel like a lot of the themes and ideas in this have been rehashed from previous installments of Star Trek. Homages and references are great, but I question why Abrams decided to go with some of the choices made here. I think that the characters could have gone through the exact same arcs by the end of the film, but through a different line of events, making the film seem a little more original. Despite that, I really loved the arcs that Kirk and Spock went through to a point, and I felt the same with the narrative. This is a movie that I seriously want to rewrite because there are many things that didn't work for me, and that's a shame because there are many things that did. And my overall reaction is mixed, and I'm only really going to be able to articulate how this is in the spoiler-filled section. So for those who have yet to see the film, Star Trek Into Darkness is a film that many people will love, and many will want to love but won't. The action is awesome with an intense pace to everything and wonderful visuals, and the characters are all very well written. However, the mainstream audiences, due to not being long-time fans of the franchise, will likely prefer this movie to the Trekkers, as it will seem entirely original. If you are a Trekker, you will be familiar with a lot of things that happen in this film, and if you're like me and you don't like seeing things you've already seen before, just done a little differently, you may, like me, feel that there's a lack of originality going on here, mainly because the character arcs and the villain are very similar to previous installments of the franchise. Regardless, Into Darkness is first and foremost fun as hell, as the previous film was. Despite my problems, I can't deny that I was gripping my seat, smiling and having a wonderful time at the movies watching this. So go see it, have a great time, and be sure to come back for the spoiler-filled section. Welcome to the spoiler-filled section. My main issue with Into Darkness was that it betrayed the logic that was set up in the first movie. This is an alternate timeline. It is firmly established that this crew will go on new adventures, and that was a wonderful formula, perfectly setting up this new universe to take liberties, such as take these wonderful characters that we know and love, and give them brand new stories. Because remember, 2009 and Into Darkness aren't movies set in a rebooted continuity, they are sequels set in an alternate timeline. They're sequels in the sense that they have the original timeline established and in mind along with these new stories in this alternate universe. I was really hoping that John Harrison wouldn't turn out to be Khan, and despite the fact that it turned out this way anyway, this didn't ruin the movie for me. I was still able to enjoy it. But by the end I found myself conflicted. I think mainstream audiences will prefer this to Trekkers because the Trekkers and I have all seen this basic story done before in Wrath of Khan, and better might I add. I've seen the scene where the character sacrifices himself for the ship, I've seen the Khan scream before, and I've seen a bunch of these plot points that happen in the movie, and a part of that took me out of it. The first reason being because of the first film, like I said, promised that this wasn't going to happen.
An alternate reality.
Precisely. Whatever our lives might have been if the time continuum was disrupted, our destinies have changed.
You have such a unique opportunity to give these characters some new adventures that we'd never seen before. We could have had Q, the Borg, or a brand new villain. I didn't really care, but I was just looking forward to a new story with these characters, and I'd hoped that this wouldn't turn into a 2-hour-long homage to Wrath of Khan, because I personally feel like it's a waste of a movie. I found the narrative to be very predictable. This is very weird because it feels like Abrams tried to have his cake and eat it too by making this movie partly a remake of Wrath of Khan, and partly a rebooted version of the story, allowing him to alter certain things such as which roles the characters play in the story. I don't know about you guys, but I don't like knowing supposedly shocking things before they happen in films. Perhaps Abrams thought that he was pleasing fans by making all these homages to Wrath of Khan, but it just kinda confused me. We have Wrath of Khan already, perfectly fine the way it is, and like I said, you are perfectly able to watch these new films chronologically with all of the others. In that sense, you're watching the same movie twice, only a little bit different here. I also have to ask why this character needed to be Khan. A big part of this doesn't make sense. Firstly, you can go back and alter the timeline and change a few things, but there's no possible way this would have turned him into him. Khan was cryogenically frozen before the timeline was even altered, so that doesn't make sense. This was almost a completely new characterization altogether. Khan is suddenly British? He's also more intimidating and less theatrical. Couldn't we have just kept this guy as John Harrison? Or what if John Harrison was a member of the Botany Bay crew, and he had the same abilities as Khan, but he's a different character altogether, so it could have worked that way too. I mean, the only reason he resembled Khan's character was his origin. This is why I seriously want to rewrite this film. I didn't want to see a rehash of Wrath of Khan, when the first half of the film was so intriguing and original. If this guy wasn't Khan, I can imagine we would have got an original storyline instead of this homage/remake/reboot of Star Trek 2. And could we not have had Kirk go through the same character arc through a more original story, through a different line of events? My final problem, and this is the big kicker, I really didn't like the ending. The previous film ended perfectly setting up the original series crew to go on some awesome adventures and get going. Into Darkness ended setting up the original series crew to go on some awesome adventures again. It felt like a lack of progression. Many things at the end got tied up similar to Iron Man 3, only it wasn't as bad here. I really don't think Kirk should have died and come back in the same film. I'm not stupid, obviously they would write James Kirk back into the trilogy before it was over, for the main reason that he's the most marketable character and he's the most popular, besides Spock, but his character arc was set up so that he was shaped into a much better captain because he suffered a no-win scenario, similar to Wrath of Khan. But killing off Kirk and then bringing him back in the same film messes up his arc. He did find a way to win this apparent no-win scenario. I think at least one crew member should have died, because then Kirk's arc would have made sense. Perhaps I missed the point of his arc. If so, please let me know in the comment section. Perhaps the reason it was wrapped up so neatly at the end has something to do with Abrams not staying on as director for the third film, but it really felt like we didn't get much progression in the trilogy here. The title of the film is Into Darkness, but I really feel like it's more Into Darkness and Back Out Again. Regardless, as much as I took issue with this film, I can't deny how entertaining it was. Do I think it's better than 2009? No. I'm personally mixed on Into Darkness. While a good movie, I think this is one of the cases where being a Trekker has ruined a part of it for me. And I'm not going to blame that on myself being a fan of the franchise and having seen Wrath of Khan, but Abrams teased us saying, look at the possibilities of this new continuity in 2009 to essentially give us here Wrath of Khan, only a little different and more energetic. It feels like a filler Star Trek movie because it ends leaving us off exactly as 2009 did. A part of me is disappointed, but I will never shy away from saying how much I enjoyed watching it. Cheers for watching guys, and as always if you like this video, you can subscribe to my channel.